Hey there, audio friends. Got a special review slash announcement for you today. We've got HEDD's new headphone. This is their first dynamic driver headphone. It's quite a departure from their past headphones. So this is the HEDDphone D1, and I'm getting this ahead of time so I can have some impressions ready for you at its launch, which is probably right about around now, early November 2025. So thank you to HEDD for sending this out to me. I do have a relationship with them. I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but they also do send me products for free, and I have been able to keep some of them in the past. I'm not sure the status of this one, if I get to keep it or not, but just full disclosure, I think there's a good chance of that. I hope there's a good chance of that because I love this thing. So we're going to dive into probably a little more specs in this headphone than I usually would, just because it is so new and there isn't a lot of information out about it right now. So I'm going to read some of the press materials to you or pick out a few of the key things that I think you should know about this headphone before we start talking about what it comes with and how it sounds and all that stuff. So to the spec sheet. Okay, so I've got the previous headphone. This is the HEDDphone 2 GT right here. This has been my favorite from them. I had the original HEDDphone 2 that they sent me. Ultimately, this was the one that I preferred. I never got to try the original headphone. But you know, you can see just by looking at these, it's quite a departure, right? It's quite a departure in build, and it's a new driver technology. So whereas this one uses their AMT drivers in it, which are fantastic. I love these headphones. I think these are some of the most detailed and beautifully presenting headphones that I've ever tried. I'm going to set those aside for now. This one contains their new dynamic driver, which uses a new technology that they're calling thin ply carbon, which is supposed to have some excellent properties for dynamic driver headphones. This was made in collaboration with Composite Sound of Sweden, who they say are specialized in advanced diaphragm design. So they say they're talking about in a lot of their press materials how they've got 40 years of experience, kind of developing speakers and drivers and things like that. And this was what they thought would do well in a headphone. And I think they did, and I think they've nailed some things with it. It's not perfect, but I think they've got a lot going with this guy. So some of the things that they say they were shooting for with this new driver and with this design: precision of a studio monitor, yet the intimacy of high-end headphones. Ultralight diaphragm and compact design enable comfortable lightweight form factor, which is something they definitely needed to work on if you've ever used any of their past headphones. Sonic clarity, tonal accuracy for audiophiles who seek fidelity and balance, built for long immersive sessions without fatigue. And then moderate impedance, 32 ohms, and a sensitivity of 100 dB for easy pairing with most sources, while scaling gracefully with premium amplification. So how close do we think they got with all these things? We'll talk about that here when we get to sound. We'll start, though, with kind of what they come with in the form factor and comfort. Again, we'll spend a little more time on the build here just because, it is a new headphone. First of all, they come with a really nice kind of semi-hard case. It fits the headphones perfectly. I thought that was pretty nice. It does have a little bag with the logo on it, and a cloth cable that it comes with that I found to be fairly adequate. The connectors are nice. It's all metal, connectors and things like that. So it all feels pretty premium as far as the materials go. Not quite as beefy as their cables that come with, the HEDDphone 2 GT. And I also like that those came with, kind of a whole cable kit, so you could switch the ends and really get it set up for any source that you would drive it to. You can tell with this one, right? It's just a 3.5 with a 1/4 inch adapter, much more geared towards being portable and using it with maybe more typical sources as opposed to some gigantic amplifier, which is really what the HEDDphone 2 needed. So I do like the case. I think it's nice. I think it's a nice touch. I've actually used it. I've actually been towing these back and forth to work because I've had some time at work to sit and listen while I'm doing other things. And I thought these worked really, really well for that. They are very comfortable. It's a plastic build, but that keeps it lightweight. It does have a metal headband. There's a nice satisfying click here. The finish is kind of this matte black, which I like the finish, but it is kind of a fingerprint magnet. Like, I cleaned these up with some rubbing alcohol before I started to film this, but you can still see there's some grease marks and things on it. So I think they're going to kind of mark up, unfortunately pretty bad, even though I do like the way they look. It's a fairly simple, headphone. I mean, especially when you look at something like the HEDDphone 2 next to it here, this is much more of a traditional looking, feeling headphone. It does come in at 350 grams, so it doesn't weigh a whole lot. It's got nice cushioning, memory foam cushioning on the headband here with like kind of a velvet type material. The pads are nice and cushy. This is a cloth material on there. It's kind of a perforated cloth. On the head, I found them to be super comfortable. I definitely could wear these for hours at a time and have. They fit that good kind of everyday, grab them, listen to them design that definitely the HEDDphone 2 didn't have. I would leave these like at my desk. I could see these being a very daily drivable headphone in a lot of circumstances. So certainly they've nailed the lightweight, comfort, form factor, all that stuff. They've done really well with that here. So how does it sound sonically? Does it meet those claims that HEDD is putting out there? Well, I think for the most part, yes. I do think these are a phenomenal sounding headphone. I did listen to them from quite a variety of sources, everything from straight out of my work MacBook Air, like the M4 model, which people say, is supposed to be a pretty decent DAC amp. I usually find it to not be as good as even like dongles like the Dawn Pro and things like that, but I actually, out of any dongle I tried with this, all of them could drive it just fine, but I actually preferred it most with the MacBook Air, just straight out of the MacBook Air when it comes to just like dongle DACs. So if you're looking for just like a simple solution that you can just plug into your laptop, I think this worked well with that. However, it wasn't until I plugged it in at home, and right now I've got kind of a slew of DAC amps that I'm trying, along with the Fosi GR72 amp, tube amp, but the Fosi GR70 tube amp being fed from the FiiO K15, that's where this thing landed for me, and like really landed to where I just didn't want to stop listening to it. So let's talk about kind of how it changed over the course of using some different, amplification. Out of the MacBook Air, I found it to be really good at like small details. And that's kind of what this headphone just does in general really, really well. It's got good timbre, and then all the little details it does really, really nicely. It has what I would call kind of like an ethereal holographic type presentation where you kind of feel like you're in the music, but you're also kind of seeing through the music. I hope that makes sense. It's not like it doesn't feel like it's like really like forcing it on you or beating you over the head with it. It's more just kind of like you're there swimming around in the audio. And I found that to be a very pleasurable listen when I was just like working and I wasn't trying to like, super focus on the music, but I just wanted some nice background tunes. I thought that worked really, really well. And this guy did that really, really well. And I was mainly listening to, acoustic music, acoustic folk music. I did listen to some classical with this, which I thought, again, because it can do kind of those nice little details and it's fairly large sounding, that I thought that was a pretty nice presentation for that style of music as well. Coming out of the MacBook Air, where I felt like it really lacked, and this was kind of with like all those dongles in general, is I felt like with the bass, I really do like the bass on this headphone. It doesn't have like any bloat to it, but it's still kind of thumpy and powerful, but while being like clean. And again, it doesn't kind of like force you to listen to it, but it's there and kind of filling presentation with the bass that I really enjoyed. The issue I had with those lesser source devices was that I felt like the bottom end could get a little disconnected from the mids and the top end. And so when I say that, it's like the when there would be more bass going on in the tracks, I felt like it would kind of suck out some of the low end of like the vocals and those middle instruments, like guitars, pianos, things like that, where the bass was still there, but it also didn't feel like it was quite as connected like throughout the track as much as, some other headphones do. Now, I largely think most of that was resolved when I got it home and I started listening. I tried it on Fosi's new ZH3. That review will be coming up before too long. And then the JDS Labs Element 4, which has kind of been my mainstay as far as, a clean DAC amp to listen to. But I currently also have the K15 in, which I think this actually pairs better with. Certainly, the K17 was my favorite with the HEDDphone 2 GT, and I think the K15 largely is really good with this too. But it's just really kind of a clean, mellow sound presentation, and I feel like that's really what suits this guy quite well. So as far as solid state, once I got it on the K15, I thought for the most part it cleaned up some of that lower end stuff, that, like I said, on kind of those lesser sources would get a little bleedy together and not be as clean of a presentation. But I still kind of was going back and forth between this and the Meze 105 Silva, which I just purchased, and I reviewed that not too long ago, because I feel like that's kind of a competitor to this. I mean, this is going to come in at around $800 whereas that one is $500. I do feel like this is better technically than the 105s, but the 105s on some of those lesser sources, I kind of found it a little more enjoyable, a little more exciting to listen to, had a little more punch to it. But while I was doing all my testing, I switched this guy over to the Fosi GR70, which I have some just like mullered tubes that I swapped into that. And boy, did this thing start to just really sing. I feel like it opened up to be just more space in between instruments and more space within the track. The bass was elevated. And ended up getting a little kind of bloaty bloomy, but I kind of like, a little bloaty bloomed in my bass every now and then, especially if I'm just listening for enjoyment. And so I found that to be quite pleasurable, but then really where it shined was it just sweetened up the middle and the upper frequencies just a touch to where they retain their really kind of clear, exacting detail, but it just sweetened them a little bit to make it more kind of just rich and warm and, I don't know, a little bit more mellow, smoother, because these are a very exacting headphone. So some of the lower end devices I listen to, like the Dawn Pro and the Dragonfly Black, like I feel like they just came off a little too sharp and it came off just a little too just brittle sounding. Again, out of the MacBook Air, that wasn't as much of a problem, but again, what I thought these guys did really, really well was on the GR70. I had it in low impedance mode, and that was just a match made in heaven for these guys. I mean, I just listened and listened and listened. And then, so at that point, I was like, well, I do actually like this better than the 105 Silvas if I have it on that setup. Like, if they're both on their best kind of amps, like, I'll take this guy over that one, even though I still love that headphone and think it's a great deal at $500. And that thing pairs really well with the Dawn Pro, so that's like only a $550 setup, right? This guy, for it to sound its best, I mean, it sounded good out of just the MacBook Air, but like coming out of the K15 to that GR70, really good. Really, really good. And then, so what I started doing was I started comparing it to the big boy, right? The HEDDphone 2 GT. And this headphone is one where I feel like you really need to settle into the sound, but you put it on an amp that can push it to where it needs to be. And boy, this thing is just so beautiful and nuanced. Just an amazing technical headphone, this guy. So I think these are like a really good complement to each other, actually. So the HEDDphone 2, if you wanted to sit down and do like some serious technical listening, as long as you got, an amplifier that does it justice. Like, again, the K15 is a good match for this guy. K17 was great too, but the K15, for less money is really good as well. That's like a super great technical performer headphone. where you're just getting like ultimate accuracy out of it. And it really is impressive what these drivers can do in this thing. There's no doubt about that. And then switching over to this guy on the GR70, now I've got like an ultimate pleasure listening headphone as well out from HEDD. So like I feel like they've got me covered here because again, this thing on that GR70 was just, oh, it's so sweet. Like it's so sweet, just such a sweet sound coming out of it. While still being fairly technically impressive, but like not HEDDphone 2 GT levels of technically impressive. You know what I mean? So I really landed on like loving this guy because I feel like I can take it to work and just plug it straight into my laptop and it sounds great for kind of background listening. And then when I get home, if I want to just turn on some tunes and just chill out and I'm not worried about like ultimate critical listening, throw this guy on and bam, I'm there. I would also say that I did spend some time gaming with the D1 here on specifically Battlefield 6, the new Red Sec, and I thought that it did a great job with that while it still maintains kind of that like exciting nature, and the bass was very impactful. I do feel like it does the little details really well, so I definitely felt like I had a little bit of a competitive edge. I did think it imaged quite well, and I do think it would be a perfectly adequate gaming headset, especially if you pair it with something like the Meze microphone, which I've got here. That's not what you're hearing right now, but this is a great little microphone. I'll do more on this later down the road. But yeah, it did work well for gaming as well. Also, playing a game called Inscription lately, which is like a rogue-based card game. Dude, that game is awesome, and this made that a really immersive experience as well, which was quite fun. So, certainly an adequate gaming headphone as well. I think they did a great job with this. $800, I guess I think it's fair price for what you're getting here. Obviously, I'm loving this headphone. I think, part of HEDD's goals with switching to a dynamic driver and making it kind of more typical is that they're hoping to gain a little more market share, which I do think they deserve. They make some fantastic products. I think if they could have brought the price in a little bit cheaper, maybe more in like the $600 range, I think it would maybe be a little more competitive to where it's down there kind of at the price of like the 105 Silva. I think, or, at that point it would be competitive with like some of the Focal stuff that's come down in price over the years and things like that. So I do think it's a great headphone. I think at $800 it's worth it. I think, the value proposition is maybe not as strong as it is on some of the other lower price dynamic headphones like the 105 Silva. But I mean, like I said, when it comes down to it, this is kind of my favorite dynamic driver headphone now. So headphones basically just got me covered here. So I think they're making great products. I'm probably sounding a little bit like a fanboy and stuff at this point, but you know what? I think if it encourages some more people to give these guys a look, then I think ultimately that's a good thing, because whether their products end up being for you, I definitely think they are worth trying and they should be in the conversation. They definitely are worth that 100%. So, if it sounds like, if the D1 here sounds like it might be for you, feel free to go check it out. They do have a fantastic warranty. Headphone offers a 5-year warranty on their stuff. So like, you can tell this is a company that really cares about their products. They really care about delivering on them, and I think for the most part they do. So, give the D1 a look if you're looking for a dynamic. If you're looking for like a flagship in the $2,000 kind of mark, I think the 2 GT is still worth a look at that price for sure. And, pairing this guy with something like the K15, that's a $2,500 setup that sounds pretty darn good as anything I've heard. Okay, as good as anything I've heard, I would say. So, thank you, Headphone, for sending this out for review. I really appreciate it. Thank you to you guys for watching and listening. Certainly, if you got questions, feel free to drop them down below, and I will do my best to answer them. Hopefully, I'll see you in the next one.